Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tailgating at NTP. I'm your host, Brady Augustine, and today we are making a sirloin bacon burger. And the big deal with this one is we're gonna cut the butcher out of it. We're not gonna use a machine. We're gonna mince the meat ourselves and make our own burgers. So if you haven't done this before, it's not something you're gonna do every day, but it's gonna amount to a delicious burger, and we're gonna show you how to do it today. Check out what we need for this recipe. All we really need is basically some sirloin. What we've done is about a half pound of sirloin per burger, and we're gonna be making 2 of them, and some bacon. So that's pretty simple and pretty obvious by the title of the meal. We are putting these on some brioche buns. We just buttered those a little bit. We're gonna grill those up a little bit later. And then very simply, we have some smoked Gouda cheese that we're gonna add to this. We're not gonna do a lot with this burger in terms of fresh vegetables and condiments. We'll throw a little ketchup and mustard on it. We've got a special ketchup that we're gonna let you know about as well. But other than that, we're gonna let the meat steal the show today. It's the star. So let's see how we did this. Now again, most of the time when you go and buy your burger, somebody threw it through a grinder somewhere, and that's just fine. It's much, much more convenient that way. However, if you have a special someone coming over, or you just want to have a burger that has a little bit more tooth to it, this is the way to go. And to be quite honest, it's not really going to take a whole lot more time. Let's see how we do it. All right, so I need my cutting board, and remember, before you put your cutting board down, you always want to have some kind of non-slip surface. I use these little shelf liners, which work just great. When pressure gets put down, it keeps it from sliding around. And the technique we're going to use today to mince our burger is exactly the same as our simple onion burger recipe we did 2 weeks ago. And this mincing technique, to be quite honest, it's a great technique to teach even small children. Don't neglect to teach your children knife skills, right? Because when they grow up, they're going to be able to make some delicious food. They're going to be making it fresh, and they're going to know what's inside of there. Now, when you have a kid in particular, now most adults, maybe many of you adults have done this a million times before, but the first thing we want to do is make sure the kids sanitize their hands. Now, I don't have the wash station in front of me, and I washed my hands before I came out, but I've got a little sanitizer here. And I just want to illustrate that kids need to understand that they need to wash their hands before they work with food, and in particular before they work with meat. Secondarily to that, actually it's even more important. Once the kids wash their hands, make sure they dry them thoroughly. The last thing you want is to be teaching your child how to use a very big, sharp knife like this and have them have wet, slippery hands and have a chance that their hands can slip off that knife. That's a bad situation. However, the process that we're using to mince this meat, again, is a very good process that even young children can learn because it's a really safe way to work with meat. So what I'm going to do is turn this over. Now, what you're seeing is just 1/3 of what we made. So I didn't want to have to mince up everything in front of you guys. I thought we'd do just part of it. We've got the rest of it already taken care of. And if you can look at this, now this is going to look very similar to your hamburger. But what this is a 75-25. You can do 80-20 meat sirloin to bacon ratio, but that sirloin meat has so little fat in it, we wanted to add back some fat. So you can see the coarse, it's a little coarser. You can see the chunks of bacon in there, and that is going to make this taste delicious. And of course, you need a little bit of fat content, and again, because you've got that sirloin, and it is so lean. Now what we're going to do with this, and what you have here is basically one single sirloin piece, and I sliced it up. I just sliced it as thin as I could to get going with it. But here's the mincing technique, and again, we use this for your vegetables, to mince herbs. You're going to use this technique a ton of times. What you want to concentrate on is you want your non-dominant left hand, in my case, over the spine of the knife, and you want to never get lazy with your fingers. So you can see how my fingers are curled backwards, and that will make sure that there's no way my fingers are going to slip underneath this knife, because one of the most important things is to have a very sharp knife. A sharp knife is safer, but you have to know what you're doing, okay? So number one, my non-dominant hand is on the spine of the knife, never gets past there, and the fingers are curled up and don't go and I don't get lazy with my fingers and let them drop down. The other side of it, my dominant hand, the one thing I want to be careful with, because again, I'm gripping the handle, but if you tend to grip a knife like this, about in the middle, in this particular technique, if I was teaching a child, I would tell them to get their hand all the way behind on the handle here, and then also to hook their thumb over, okay? And all we have to do is just a simple rocking motion like this, and what that's gonna do is every rocking motion is gonna slice this meat one more time. And what you'll find is let the children start slow. And if you haven't done it before, just start slow. Don't worry about speed. Just worry about bringing that knife in full contact with the cutting board and making sure you're not lazy with your fingers. If you can do it safe and you can do it slow, you can always work on the speed later on. But once you get going with this technique again, it can be just this fast. And I'm gonna make a little noise because I got utensils on the table, but you can see how quickly you can get this done. And now you work from the other side and push it forward. And it takes a little bit of elbow grease and it takes a little bit of time. But as you can see, we're already getting this beef and that bacon minced up to some extent. You have complete control over what kind of coarseness or fineness you want your meat to be in this case. And one thing you might want to do is chill this meat before you cut it. If it's, even put it in the freezer for a half an hour. Get it nice and firm. You don't want it frozen, but nice and firm. And that'll just make it a little bit easier when you go to mince it up.
Yeah, I've thought a lot of times about getting a meat grinder because then you can pick really prime cuts of meat and make your burgers with it. But this, I love this technique because you have total control over the exact grind of your meat.
You do, and I love the idea of a meat grinder too, because then you go out, like you're saying, you go out, you get your clearance meat and you make something really delicious out of it that's even better than you would have been able to get oftentimes in a restaurant. The thing to me though, when I really think about it, look how long I've been working on this, maybe a minute. And I've already basically got, if I wanted to go coarse with this, I basically got it there. The problem with coarser is it's going to maybe have a tendency to fall apart. But think about this. You got to put your grinder in the freezer. If you're using a grinder, you want your grinder cold, you want your meat cold. You put your grinder in the freezer, you let it chill, you bring it out, you load it up, you grind it twice, so you put everything through twice. Now you got to clean that grinder, right? You got to clean every element of that. You got to sanitize it. How much longer am I really taking here to make this burger? And obviously I've only got a third of it, so it does take a little time, but basically using this method, you can go as quickly as you want and it really does a good job. So you can see what we've got. Now I don't have this mixed in, so obviously just like a burger, you're gonna wanna turn this over. We're gonna do that in just a minute, but right about there is kind of where I like it. You can always go finer. It just takes a pass and then a pass forward, and then oftentimes you'll get that bit in the middle. You can just roll over. You can also turn the cutting board to go against the grain that you've been going to make sure you mince in both directions. But that's all it takes, guys. Now we're talking a sirloin and bacon burger. All it needs is to be mixed with that. Now again, how long is it going to take me to clean this knife? Not too long. I got to clean my hands, I got to clean my board, I got to clean my knife. But I've got my burger just like that. So now we just like a regular burger, we just got to mix this up, okay? So you got to get in and get dirty. And again, I've got my sanitizer here. I'm going to do the best I can to keep things sanitary and do it the right way. It's just for me and you though, right, JR? So I mean, you know, we're tough guys from Wisconsin, so we can handle this. All right, so you do that.
I'm gonna get sick and die. This is a great way to go.
This will be a good way to go. No, we won't. This is actually, you know, my hands have been cleaned several times. I've got sanitizer in the water, so this is really going to do just fine for us, I think. All right, so now once I'm done with that, I'm just going to bust this into two parts, because we're going to make two burgers out of this. And you can see how, if you did burgers for 6 or 8 people, this is not the way to do it. But if you want to make a really special burger, just look at that. I mean, this is way different. Just look at that. The fat from the bacon is in there, but you know the meat is so lean. And by the way, I'm going to pass this. You guys, you're not going to be able to tell what's going on here, but take a smell of this, Jack. Just smell that.
Oh,
Can
nice.
you not? I mean, it's like a land jagger, if you've ever had land jaggers, or a stick of summer sausage or something like that. It just smells phenomenal. And I will say this much, I did not equalize out my patties very well, but I'm going to try not to be a perfect. Actually, I have to be. I can't do it this way. That's way too uneven. About like that. Let's do this. And while we're doing that, I'm just going to make sure my grill is ripping hot, and we are looking very good as far as that goes. Once I open the door, it's hitting 600 now. As soon as I open the door, though, that temperature is going to drop. So our surface temp is probably going to be in that extra high and we'll tend to go down from there, so we'll be good, I think. And I'm gonna make these patties, you know, a ½ inch thick or something. Again, this is roughly a ½ pound of meat, and so we broke that into 2 patties. Or actually, this is roughly a pound of meat, I'm sorry, total. So we broke it into 2 half-pound patties. And we're just gonna even those out. Again, like I always do this with my burgers. It's certainly not necessary, but if you take and put a little dimple in that burger, just kind of press it in on the inside, it will help you from, it will keep you from getting that sort of football-shaped burger that I know some of you have had out there. You get that thing that just plumps up in the middle, and then it really doesn't fit very well in the bun. Everything tends to roll off of it, and frankly, it's just not very nice, and I don't think it tastes as good that way. So I'll go ahead and do that.
Our buddy Phil Jones joined.
Hey, Phil! Phil is out there in the house. I think Phil's up in Minnesota. All right, now our burgers are made. I'm gonna go ahead again and just clean my hands off while you guys are checking this out. And I won't be using a knife after this, but I do want to reiterate, if you've got kids working with, learning knife skills in particular, you want to make sure working with food, they learn to sanitize, they learn to wash their hands. But if you are working with knives, make sure they dry their hands off afterwards. All right, so what we have here, I really should have put these down first, is a couple of really nice looking patties. I'll lay those out. You can take another look at those if you want. And again, this is nothing but sirloin and bacon. And you know, I have to ask myself this, I'm sure some of you will ask, you know, why would you waste a perfectly good sirloin to do this? Well, the thing of it is sirloin is so lean. I love sirloin steak. I have nothing against it. But sirloin is so lean that when you actually make a burger this way, it really adds a phenomenal amount of flavor. You'd be surprised how delicious this is. And frankly, I almost would take it over a sirloin steak. All right, so with our burgers done, we are ready to go ahead and throw these on the grill. I'm gonna open this up because we do have it ripping hot right now. And our burgers are ready to go on there. And a couple of things about this, we made these ourselves, so we know exactly how much fat is in there. And we do want to be careful to make sure, because this is chopped ourselves, we minced it ourselves, these will have a little more of a tendency, because they tend to be more coarse, to break up as we make them and as we turn them over. So I'm going to be a little more careful than I normally would have to be in terms of turning these burgers over. And what I'm using for that is the same thing I always use. I got this 2 spatula scraper set up. The only real reason I use this is because I'm fairly attached to it. I used to make cheesesteaks with this setup all the time. But the fact of the matter is, this allows you to use both your non-dominant and your dominant hand, and I just find it incredibly useful. So these burgers, we're going to probably do about two minutes aside and see where we're at. Well, actually, we'll do 2 minutes and then turn them to get our grill marks. So probably a total of 4 minutes aside. And you can see the fat is rendering out here a little bit already. And what you're not going to get, one of the things that might be an improvement, I think, even to this burger, is to do these burgers on a flat iron grill, because then you'll get more contact and more of that bacon is going to have that Maillard reaction, get crispy, you'll get that nice crust. That's one way I would really like to try these burgers at some point in the future. But for right now, we're okay with it. Now, if you have a burger like this, one of the things, you throw it on, and the first thing guys want to do is mash it down, smash it, move it around, stuff like that. Just leave the meat alone. The most important thing when you drop that meat on a hot grill is to leave it alone. It's going to seize up a little bit at first, and a lot of guys get scared that it's going to stick. Just leave it. It'll release pretty much on its own. The other thing I did, because of the way that we made this burger today, is I did oil down my grates a little bit. I'm not a big proponent of that. Generally, if you just leave the meat alone, it pretty much releases by itself. But I did do that in this case because I want to be a little more careful with these burgers than I would normally have to be. And now we can see that gray is creeping up the side of the burger a little bit. So we are probably getting about ready, about to the point where we can give that a little bit of a quarter turn and get our cross hatching on it. This one maybe not so much. It looks like it's a little cooler there. And you can see how that burger has basically released by itself. No big problem, but this scraper does come in handy. And then the other thing with the scraper is I have basically 2 hands to work. The only drawback to having this particular setup is that I don't have long handles, and those long handles are nice. One thing you'll want to do if you are making this burger and you don't have a 2-spatula setup or a spatula scraper, you might want to get out your big, wide spatula to make these burgers. All right, let's give this other one a try. See how it's hanging in there a little bit yet, so I'm going to let that go just a little bit more.
Yeah, really the only time I can imagine you would want to smash your burgers down is if you're trying to make a Culver's Butterburger copycat.
Well, there is a smash burger. There are burgers, but what you're doing with that is you're actually creating the patty by smashing it down on a grill, and that does make sure you get full contact. There's nothing wrong with that. But once you smash it down and make your patty, you leave it alone and let it release. So that's just a little different technique. There are a lot of burgers that use that technique. I'm sure we'll be making one in the future. This grill's a little bit cool on that side, so I think now what we're watching for is we're just watching for the cooked element to come up from the sides a little bit. Look at you can see the fat in this that's laced through that. Again, you have complete control with this system. You can put more bacon in it if you want. We have a 75-25. You could go an 80-20 and have a little bit of a leaner bacon. It's still going to have tons and tons of flavor. And I'm going to go ahead, I think I'm going to try and get this to a hotter part of the grill when I move it. Over there. So yeah, like I said, with this burger, we're not going to do a whole lot with it. We're going to throw some Gouda on it, and we're going to throw our cherry chipotle ketchup on it, which we made for our Aaron Rodgers 40 burger. If you might have seen that episode, it actually mellowed and got better in the fridge. So we're going to go ahead and throw that on there. What that is a homemade ketchup with a couple pounds of tomatoes that we just pureed, cooked down with some vinegar, some sugar, some garlic powder, cinnamon, nutmeg, but then also we added a little tart cherry syrup to that just to give it a little bit of a tart sweetness. And then with the vinegar and all that, I think it'll balance out the smokiness of these burgers a lot. All right, now this one is getting close. I'm going to go ahead and close the lid for just a minute here to make sure we get the temperature back up. And a lot of times I won't close the lid all the way because I want to let some of the humidity release. Sometimes I'll put my spatula in there, and that allows it keeps the heat climbing or stable, but it also releases a little bit of the humidity because I don't want to be boiling stuff on my grill. And in just a minute we'll be ready to turn those over, I think. So what should we talk about in the meantime? Because we have to wait. Another thing that I'm going to add to these, if I remember right, and I don't know how many people, I'm sure a lot of people know about this, but this is smoked paprika. I'm just going to put a sprinkle of this on there, and it's basically a pepper it's been smoked, and it is one of the most fantastic seasonings. I don't want to get my nose too close, but I absolutely love this stuff. You're going to see it in a bunch of recipes because I use it all the time. I didn't put any salt, you'll notice, on these patties like you normally would before you cook them. You could put some pepper. I didn't feel it was necessary, but because we have the bacon in there, we've got such a good salt content. I think it's just about right, and I just didn't want to mess with that. All right,
I'm going to say that smoked paprika is probably going to go great with that smoked Gouda.
Yeah, we got the smoked Gouda, we got the smoke in the bacon. Oh, that looks good right there. That looks good right there. So we got it going on with that one. This one it's a little bit thicker. I didn't do a really good job. One of the things that is important if you're making your own patties, I know most of you know this, but you can see that I didn't really even these out, and it is worth taking a little bit of time. If you have a scale, even weighing out your meat real quick, and then making your patties the same thickness and the same size will ensure that they cook at the same time, because what we're getting here is one, and of course your grill temperature is going to vary a little bit across the surface of the grill as well. But we're getting one that's cooking a little bit faster than the other. That's no problem. I did turn these on the one side to make sure I had crisscross grill marks. I'm not going to worry about that on the back side because it's only one side is going to be up when the burger is open faced. And now we can start to either take a temperature with an instant read thermometer, or just feel it a little bit, and that to me is right about to medium rare. This one is a little bit behind that. It's a little softer. For me, actually, that one on the left is probably going to be fine. We'll give it about 30 more seconds, and then I think we'll be ready to go. Let me just go ahead and wipe my hands off. And then we're going to rest those burgers for just a minute. Anybody got to have some favorites out there? I know Phil has a favorite burger, I'm sure, out there somewhere. And this morning, we actually had mentioned a great idea. What about what can you put on this burger? You can put anything you want. We're letting the beef be the star and the bacon be the star. That's okay. But you can put anything you want. You could grill up some onions. You could throw some mushrooms on there. You can do fresh veggies, fresh tomatoes, fresh lettuce, things like that. Stuff you're growing in your garden, guys. It's garden time. That's all freaking good. Now, one thing I would not particularly recommend for this burger is raw onions. If you were to put raw onions on this burger, now raw onions are delicious. I love them. But raw onions on this particular burger, I think, would be very bracing and would draw your taste buds away from the true star of the show, and that's our beef that we spent so much time actually mincing up ourselves. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take these off the grill, like so. And again, with this spatula scraper system, I'm going to go ahead and take this one. This one will be a little bit lighter, but that's okay with me. And you can see this burger has more of a tendency to break up. You got to be a little more careful. I can see that's going to be more rare, and that's okay. And let's go ahead and cover those up. Rest them for a few minutes. People say 10 minutes, people say 5 minutes. I try to rest them for at least 5 minutes. Let's turn off our grill and make sure the propane is off. Now, once that is done and it's resting, I mean, you could add any number of, you could add potato salad. You could have a vinegar-based potato salad if you wanted to cut that fat a little bit. You know what we forgot to do is put on our cheese. But I think with this resting, we can do that. And I did warm this, I tempered this cheese so it's at room temperature. It won't melt the way we really want it to. In fact, it might not be a bad idea to put them back on the grill, but I'm not going to do that. I don't think that's going to be...
Gouda's pretty soft.
That Gouda, and I like it when it still holds up just a hair. It's not going to be quite as melted as we like. Of course, we've had that problem in the past. And while we're doing that, let's go ahead and toast these out just a little bit. Some people like to toast both sides of the bun. I've done it both ways. To me, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of another. I just like it. I like it toasted. I also like, if you got a simple burger like we did the onion burger a couple weeks ago, I just like to throw it on a regular old white bread. It's not the greatest for you, and I tend to try to stay away from feeding my children that. I guess maybe I've given up on myself. I don't know what it is. But
those are
we'll
really
let those
heavy,
toast
by
a little
the way.
bit. Huh?
Those are really
These
heavy.
are a brioche bun. So yeah, they've got more egg in them and butter in them. So they're going to be heavier. They're going to be denser. And what we have a big burger. We have a burger with a lot of flavor to it. We wanted a bun that was going to hold up to that, and this is a brioche. You could make your brioche yourself. You can find it at the grocery. We just found this at the grocery store. No big deal. So that should do well with that. But yeah, for sure, there's tons and tons of salads. You could just do chips. You can do fries. This would be great with corn on the cob this time of the year. This time of year, the corn on the cob, even in the grocery store, starts to get at least palatable. And if you're not growing your own, you're kind of stuck with corn on the cob from the grocery store. So tons of fresh veggies would be good with this. We're just focusing on making the burger itself today. So about the time our buns are toasted, they're getting nice lines on them. Ooh, and those are... About the time our buns are toasted, I think we're going to be good to go as far as resting those. Oh yeah, those are looking good. Now the difference on the grill grate is that we're going to get lines, but we're not going to get that full toasting effect like you would if you had it laying on a flat iron.
Hey, Deb Bunting Jones just showed up.
All right, Deb, good to see you. Let's grab a knife, because we're going to want to cut one of these in half.
You tried these Memorial Day, was it?
I tried these Memorial Day, and like I said, I'm not really big on putting the bacon fat inside with the meat because it doesn't get that sort of rendering, sort of Maillard reaction, it's called, where it gets brown and crispy and delicious. That's kind of what I love about bacon. And then I made them on Memorial Day, and I got to be honest, this is one of my favorite burgers ever. The little amount of work that I put in. Now, again, if you buy it from the grocery store, you could go and get your butcher to put some sirloin and bacon together and grind them up for you. Or if you have a grinder, you can make it yourself. But the little amount of time I put into making a couple of these burgers was well worth it. This is honestly probably my favorite burger ever right now. All right, so we've got some toast there. And I think we are just about ready to go ahead and plate these up and see what we've got. So again, you can toast these buns on both sides. And yeah, that melted out pretty good. Let's go ahead and lay one of those on there. You can see the juice coming out. That is not dry. The onion burgers that we did got a little bit past where I personally like them. They still tasted great, and I still recommend them. They just were not made quite the way I want. Now, why don't we put a sprinkle of smoked paprika on there? That'll add a little color. It's a really nice element. You can add whatever you want, or frankly, you can eat this burger with nothing on it. It is absolutely delicious. There is our homemade cherry chipotle ketchup from the Aaron Rodgers 40 burger that we did a little while back. Maybe a little bit of mustard just to cut the fat a little bit. Put the lid on. I'd like to see that cheese melted just a hair more, but it is going to taste absolutely delicious. I know at that temperature, it's really going to have a lot of flavor. And let's cut that. Let's see what we've got. Oh, see the juices flowing. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh, that is so perfect. That's a sandwich that your neighbors will write home about right there. And I think I need to take a bite. What do you think, Jerry? Since you don't get to, cameraman doesn't get to, let's take a bite of this sucker. And we have a nice, you can see how nice and thick that Gouda is. I want to get a lot of that smokiness and that creaminess in there. And this, again, is another reason to add something like the cherry chipotle ketchup, a little bit of a cutting agent, something with some acidity. Seriously good. One of the things that I can't describe, let me chew first. It's so smoky. The Gouda is, actually the Gouda is brilliant. It is just creamy, melting in my mouth. And it isn't feeling too fatty, but here's the deal with this burger, guys. When you bite into this burger, I know some of you go out to restaurants and they say they make you a steak burger. When you bite into this burger, you're getting a steak burger. You can feel the difference. It's got more tooth to it. There's some chew there. And it's just absolutely delicious. I love this combination. Again, you can add all kinds of veggies, fresh veggies. You can do grilled onions, mushrooms, anything you want to add. It's totally your ball game. But as it stands right now, this burger is probably this burger is my favorite burger ever. It is just absolutely sensational. I love the balance. It's perfectly cooked, I will say that much. We did nail it on the cooking. It's juicy, it's done, but it's still pink in the middle. And you can so tell that this was made at home because it's a little coarser than what you get with your hamburger from the grocery store. All right, guys, I think that's going to do it because I'm going to need to finish this burger. And I want to get to that as soon as possible. But I do want to thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll try this at home. Again, it's not something you're going to want to do every weekend, but for a special occasion, and if you have a small group of people in particular, you could make this for 4 really quickly, really easily. Add whatever sides and things that you want to add to it, and you're going to have one of your favorite tailgating meals. So we'll talk to you next time, guys. Thank you so much for watching Total Tailgating at NTP.